Well, to help answer some of your questions about COVID-19, Dr. Lauren Streicher is back with us, and she is answering some of your viewer questions. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, we're going to start with this question here. Why do some people get really deathly ill when other people who are exposed hardly get sick at all?
This is the hot topic that comes across my medical news feed every morning. And it's interesting because we've known from the get-go that the people that are most at risk are older people and also people that have lung disease. But what's emerging and what seems to be at the top of the list of the risk group are folks with heart disease, underlying heart disease, past heart attacks, high blood pressure. And these are the people that really are getting very sick and not doing well. And in fact, in one Chinese study, 50% of those people ultimately ended up going on ventilators and dying. And it makes sense because if you are having lungs that are compromised, your heart is going to work harder. So it's really, really important that these people are particularly careful about social distancing, about staying away. There are other groups as well that appear to be higher risk than the general population. Folks with diabetes, people that are obese, men don't do as well as women. It's not really clear why, but men are not doing as well. People of color had a disproportionate number of deaths. Not clear if it's because they have more heart disease and diabetes or it's more difficult to social distance. The other group that's interesting to look at is that we've always talked about how it's the old folks, yet clearly a lot of young people are also getting sick and sometimes really sick. And while we don't completely understand why that happens, it appears that vaping and smoking pot seem to be risk factors that we are seeing in some of the young people that are getting really sick.
Interesting. Back in December, I had a cold and coughs that seemed to last forever. My sister had mild symptoms. Could that have been COVID? And if so, would we have some immunity to the virus? Are there tests that could reveal if we had it or not?
Well, it very likely could have been COVID, and that's part of the problem, is that we know that not only are many people completely asymptomatic, but a lot of people have mild symptoms. And certainly back in December and January, the radar wasn't up, so people weren't thinking about COVID. They just assumed they had a cold. So is there a test that can tell you if, in fact, it was COVID? Yes, we do have antibody tests that are emerging now. These are blood tests that are quick turnaround tests, a couple of drops of blood, that actually will tell you if you have made antibodies to COVID from a prior exposure, which is important because number one, it means it's unlikely, almost impossible that you would get it again. And number two, you don't need to be as worried if you want to go to work, especially if you're working in a high risk group, that you really need to get back in the action. The other reason that you want to know if you have antibodies is it turns out that these antibodies may be really useful. We're looking at using the plasma from people who were already sick in order to treat those who are getting sick right now. But of course, here's the problem. Same thing with the testing, which we know, despite what we hear, is not widely available. The antibody tests are not yet widely available. There are about 70 companies right now that are scrambling to get these tests out to the public, to get them quickly tested. And you can see them starting to emerge some places. But it's not as if these are easy tests to get, not covered by insurance, usually about $100 or so, as best as we can tell. But I think you're going to start to hear a lot more about these antibody tests, which is great because we're really flying blind right now in terms of understanding who's had the disease, who's the most vulnerable, and who we can potentially use their plasma to help those that are getting sick.
Dr. Streicher, thanks so much for your time. Have a good weekend. And if you have questions for Dr. Streicher, head to drstreicher.com.